Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Discover New Music podcast from us at Pelt Music. Shortly, we'll be chatting with Krooked Tongue, who we recently featured over on our Discover New Music playlist on Spotify with their single "When the Beaches Bleed." But before then, the usual reminders from myself: if you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. We are on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And please also hit that like button, hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Discover New Music podcast from us at Pelt Music. Absolutely delighted today to be joined by Ollie from Krooked Tongue. How are you doing on this fine evening?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely delighted to have you on the podcast. We've spent quite a bit of time listening to your most recent single, "When the Beaches Bleed." Really enjoyed it. Hence, we've stuck it on the playlist and we've invited you onto the podcast. So we will talk about the single in just a moment, but we start every podcast with the same segment because the podcast obviously is aimed at new listeners, people that aren't familiar with the band. So we always start with the origin story. What is the origin story for Krooked Tongue? How did you guys come together?
So we met at BIM probably three or 4 years ago, I think now. And me and Dan originally we met via a few mutual friends on a night out, like on a Freshers Week. Eventually we ended up hanging out and stuff, and then we ended up moving in together, like end of second year, no, third year, I think. And at that time, I was looking to start a rock band or whatever. We had a couple of other members in at the time. When I first started, we were a four-piece, and then we ended up trimming it down. We ended up meeting Harry through again. Someone recommended him because he was looking for a band, and then sort of went from there. Really, yeah. We all wanted to do the same kind of music, so.
Yeah, which definitely helps, obviously. And you come from a thriving music scene in Bristol. There's a load of fantastic young bands, up and coming bands in Bristol.
Yeah.
What is it like for you to be part of that scene?
Yeah, we're really lucky to like the fact that our inception was in Bristol because, I think it's the most happening music scene at the moment, or one of at least anyway.
Yeah, no, I'd certainly echo that. It's a fantastic city, and obviously, the music scene really is cracking down there at the minute as well. And the outcome of obviously the origin story is we've got the band, Krooked Tongue, and you have just put out your latest single, "When the Beaches Bleed," which obviously we've really enjoyed. We've put on the podcast, the playlist rather. So tell us about the song. How did that song come together for you, and what is it all about?
So the premises of the song is basically about big wave surfing, like maverick surfing and stuff, and I've always really been into that kind of thing. Used to really love watching it and surfing myself. Not anything major, not any big wave stuff. Unfortunately, not that talented. But I thought. But when the song came about, I think it came from a riff that Dan was sort of messing around with in rehearsal. And it just like instantly I was like, that sounds really cool. So we sort of went from there, jammed out for a bit, and then I went home, finished the song, wrote the lyrics and stuff, and came around pretty quickly. And it's like the one we opened with now live.
Yeah.
So it just felt, I don't know, it all fell together pretty fast in the end.
Yeah, and it is certainly based around a very beefy riff indeed. Fantastic song. Yeah, listeners definitely obviously make sure you check out on the playlist. And you recorded it with Josh from Foxjaw as well. Obviously, he is fantastic for the scene in Bristol, and helps and produces for a lot of the young up and coming bands that are coming out of that scene. How was it for you working with him?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, we've just been in the studio actually a couple of weeks back, recording 4 new songs with him. So it's like, he's our go-to man, and he just sort of gets where we want to go with the sound. You know what I mean? There's no wasted time or anything. We go and he knows what we want to do. Then all the other stuff's just like additional, like any other stuff we want to mess around with, which is really like efficient. It's good.
Yeah, definitely is. And with the track, obviously, you talked about the big surf, big wave themes behind it. Obviously, the video went along with that, being on the beaches, and that was actually recorded with Kieran from Foxjaw. So a nice little link there. Talk to us about the video. How did the concept for that video come together, and what was it like filming it?
Well, it's kind of the idea of it was the whole beach thing and everything, tying it into the theme of the song, but it was done on a whim in the end, because we were meant to have an actress come in and there was going to be a storyline of an actress and everything. It never ended up happening because there was some date mix up and stuff, and we sort of had to get it recorded. So we went away from the narrative sort of thing, went for the more like cinematic, imagery sort of style. I think it turned out really cool, to be fair. It does look.
Yeah, it did turn out really cool. And listeners, again, we'll have the link for it in the bio of the episode, and you should definitely check it out. My question to you would be, what was it like playing on sand? Because that stuff gets absolutely everywhere, doesn't it? So I can't imagine it's conducive to a live show, really.
Yeah, no, not really. Well, we were miming to the recording. It was originally, we had a little speaker and stuff, and because Harry was playing the drums, he was playing the drums, so it looked like he was playing the drums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because they were so loud, we couldn't hear the recording, so it was a bit of like shambles at the beginning. But also the sand there, it was filmed on Bream Beach, and like the sand there is like quicksand if you go a bit too far. So it was carnage, but it was good carnage. We got it in the end, but I don't know, it was fun.
Yeah, it amazes me quite often, the things that artists are willing to put themselves through to get that video, but obviously it's all worth it in the end, because it has come out really well. Yeah. So I wanted to touch back to not fully on the origin story, but obviously I think the band formed in around 2019. Obviously, not a great time for new bands to form, really, with what happened over the couple of years that followed. And I know you were particularly put out. You had some really good shows and festivals lined up. How did that feel for you as a new act? Trying to break out there, to have your momentum just cut off. Talk to us.
It wasn't pleasant, to say the least. But it is what it is, and like, you can sit and think, why has it happened to me? But it's not happened to you; it's happened to everyone, and so everyone was in the same boat. It was like a factory reset, I suppose. And it's kind of coming back from all like having the time off and stuff. It was kind of good for us. It wasn't good for us, but we managed to like meet Josh and everything. It was like turning over a new leaf, and starting a new chapter, basically. That being cliche as hell.
And it is. I do like to get the nicer stories, because obviously there's a hell of a lot of bad stories from the last couple of years, especially in the music industry.
Loads of bands that just give up, and it's really
precisely.
There's some great bands that have just ended it.
It is a real shame. We've lost so many really good bands, as you say, over that period. But thankfully you've come out the other end of it, and part of what you came out the other end of it with was your debut EP, No Vacancy Hotel, which came out back in February. So here we are, 6 months later. How have you found the reception to that EP?
It's been crazy. So when we released that, we did a launch in Bristol, Louisiana, which was absolutely wild. It was sold out. It was just it was crazy. And then since then, really, I don't know. It's just we've been getting all kinds of magazines and articles and all kinds of stuff. It's just radio play. It's just it's crazy. It's good. Like, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely an element of luck in there. Being one of them bands that came out the other side intact, and obviously it gave you the opportunity, I believe, to actually record, the EP, which perhaps you wouldn't have had if you had been playing them shows. So
yeah, exactly.
So moving on slightly to the future, you touched on, you've been back in the studio with Josh and recorded a few more songs. Obviously you're not going to be able to give too much away, because it's all about the promotion, isn't it? And you've got to, exactly. But can fans expect something bigger from you in the near future, rather than just a single? Is there another EP, another album? What are you looking at?
So I think we've got about 5 songs now that are in the bank, recorded, so we're trying to decide now whether to do. But I mean, it might be a similar sort of strategy to last time, a few singles and then the EP and standard procedure. But we're just trying to figure out now what the next single is going to be, because we had one when we went to record Beaches. We already recorded one as well, another one. We were going to release after, but now we recorded these 4. We really like the new 4 we've just done, and they're really new songs as well. So obviously there's like that, and you want to sort of get them out. Then you don't want to get them out too soon because you want to give them time and stuff. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be a single next, maybe October, November sort of time.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about strategizing there, and obviously you talked a bit about the other songs being in the bank and everything. We've talked about social media, obviously the reaction obviously to the EP. A lot of it comes through social media these days, I should say.
Yeah.
And is it something that you marry up when you're strategizing your approach for what you're going to have come next? Are you looking at what you've just done, what the reaction was to it, and is that helping you formulate that strategy going forward?
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to see what went well on the last thing you did, because especially with the fans and stuff, they want to hear. I mean, they're open to new stuff, but you know what it's like. Myself as a music fan, when the band you like releases something that's completely different, you're a bit like, do I like this, or am I just saying I like it because the band I like, whatever, or you just hate it? So you have to there's an element of thinking about that, but at the same time, you want to have fun with it, and you want to release something that's, pushing you as a songwriter, or
Yeah, I mean, that is what it all comes down to at the end of the day. Obviously, it's nice if a band can take off and shoot to not necessarily fame, but certainly success from what we can get these days. But obviously, ultimately, you need to be happy in what you do. So I guess if we're going to get really deep now, are you happy with where you're going?
Yeah. I think we're in a good place at the moment. Everything's sort of falling into place. It's good. Like I said, we're lucky.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously, the recorded side of the industry is great, but we all really love obviously the live side, and that was curtailed by the pandemic, but it is back now, and you've been able to get out and play some shows. What was it like for you as a young artist coming out and being able to play shows again?
Yeah, that's the part we love the most. Like, everything else is great, and we love recording, but playing, like, especially as a rock band, I think you struggle to find a rock band that don't. Favorite part isn't playing live, so it's just been really good. And you can never replace that energy you get from the crowd and the feedback and everything. So yeah,
completely agree with you on that. It's the side that we all love the most, really, isn't it? And you are out there still. You got a headline show or a show coming up in London on the 3rd of September, I believe. So what kind of a live band is our Krooked Tongue? What should fans expect if they're going to come along and check you out?
Energetic, I suppose, would be the word. Like, we love, if you're not aching at the end of the gig, you're not done it right. That's what we always say. And Harry's always sweating his ass off.
Yeah.
I've never known anyone sweat that much, but I mean, he's doing his job, so But
yeah,
I think it's important. It depends what the performance calls for, I suppose, but we just love going mad. Like I said, feeding off the energy from the crowd and stuff.
Yeah, and as a young band, obviously coming up and playing with other bands, probably playing with some bands that are more experienced. Are you looking at what they're doing? Are you looking to learn lessons, from their approach and what they do?
Definitely. We've played and we've been looking to have some really cool support slots and stuff over the last year or so with some bands that we've been a fan of for ages. So, like, that kind of stuff, like, you never stop learning, but that's where you learn the most kind of things, because it's so, like, second nature to those kind of bands that have played those big shows so often. It's crazy. Yeah,
no, excellent. It's really good to hear. So what have you got lined up again? You might not be able to say too much, but are there plans, to hit the road in the rest of this year, or are you looking to hold out until obviously the new music comes to tour alongside that? What sort of roughly is the time scale for fans to be able to check you out live again?
Yeah, so we're playing this one in London on the weekend. Then we've got a festival in Worcester at the end of mid-September, so that'll be in a couple of weeks as well. Then I think we're doing a little festival in Southampton in November. But I think October time we were looking to get out on the road again, and that might come with a single release, but I don't know yet. We'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, and for listeners to be able to see how it pans out, obviously we touched on it already. Social media is the place to go in this day and age. So obviously, listeners, the places to head, and I've got the handles written down here, are on Instagram and Facebook. It's Krooked Tongue, quite easy to remember. On Twitter, Krooked_Tongue. So my question would be, did you miss out on the Krooked Tongue handle on Twitter?
Honestly, I've got no clue. It might have just been a fancy thing that we did because it's Twitter. Just when we were starting out, just put an underscore in there. It's be really awkward, but it might have already been gone. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I have to look into that. Maybe.
Yeah, I do like a bit of synchronicity, but no, the old underscore on Twitter is a regular one that we get. So obviously, listeners, that's where you need to head, and we've got the links for you in the bio of the episode as well. So obviously, there's potentially new music on the way and potentially more shows on the way that you need to check out for sure, and obviously follow the band. Ollie, the next section that follows on from the live chat is what we call set list science. So I'm quite a set list geek and pay a bit of attention to, bands, what they're playing, and what the structure is and everything. So my question to yourself would be, how much importance do you place on the structure of a set list, and have you got any rules that you tend to follow?
Yeah. So I'm not really ritual about this stuff. I think like it's the same as to an album, isn't it? Like it has to have a flow. It sort of has to tell a linear story. It can't just be like random ass songs like everywhere. So I feel like a set list is exactly like that. You sort of want to start big, follow it up big, bring it down a little bit, bring it up again. You know what I mean? You want some like dynamic parts of the set. Otherwise, it gets a bit either like monotone or it's not lively enough. Whatever, you have to balance it out. But yeah, I really like that stuff, like organising set lists.
Yeah, I love to hear that because I'm a bit of a set list geek, and you can quite often tell the bands that put in that effort into it. Do you tend to, as you go along playing shows, obviously monitor the audience reactions to certain songs or certain portions of the set list, and will you tweak things based on that?
Yeah, I think that's important as well. And like recently, the sort of songs I've been writing, I don't know why the last few months they've been more indie than like harder rock. Like there's been a few that are even heavier to be fair, but they're more like melodic and because I'm a like sucker for melody. I love melody, so we've been trying to like see how those fit into the set. And I cannot sometimes I think it's not going to fit in the set because of how we sound. It's a bit, but then you put it in and it does sound like you anyway. So like you can get hung up on like genre. If you feel like you're outside your own genre, you can get hung up on that. But I think you just have to try them out and see how they work. And most of the time they do work. So.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think it is important to gauge that reaction and change, because a lot of bands will tour just a static set list, and you can perhaps see where the lulls are or where it's not quite working, and they're just persistently, no, we're sticking with that set list because of what we toured. So it's great to hear that you are, willing to tweak things about a bit.
Yeah.
So three of you in the band as well. How heated do the discussions around the set list get, or do you normally tend to agree on it?
Never. We never heat at all. It's like we try this. Yeah. And everyone agrees. I was like, yeah. Or like if it's not, it's like maybe try this one. But we seem to like always just get each other with the way the set's flowing, which is cool and quick and stuff. So that's good.
Yeah, and that word lucky again, really, because I do speak to a number of bands where I ask that question and they kind of look at each other sideways and like, yeah we have a few issues.
yeah, no issues, thankfully.
Yeah,
There's still time yet.
There is. Obviously, there's a lot to come from Crooked Tongue in the future. And listeners, obviously, social media, as we know, is the place. And obviously, Crooked Tongue on Instagram and Facebook, and get that underscore in the middle on Twitter. That's where you need to be following the band. Ollie, it's been great, having this chat with you. We have really enjoyed When the Beaches Bleed, and obviously, we're going to be keeping track of everything that's coming from the band going forward. Obviously, exciting times for yourself. What would be your final message for the listeners today?
Keep the faith. If you've started music, well, just keep going, because, like we said earlier, the lockdown and stuff, a lot of people just gave up. But it's all about perseverance. Like, that's the most important part of being a musician, because so many people just give it up because they think they're not going to get anywhere. I think you just got to carry on, because otherwise you'll really regret it when you get older.
Yeah, and I think that is, quite a powerful message to end on, to be honest, especially on this podcast, aimed, at newer music and newer bands. I think, all too often you see bands with great potential peter out and obviously not push through, but not every band breaks through instantly. I mean, obviously a bit of a musical diversion, but the one that always springs to mind was Snow Patrol. Obviously, they break through with Final Straw, which was actually, I believe, like their third or even maybe fourth album, before they actually hit that mainstream. So certainly worth persevering.
But and Idols are a good example as well, because Idols, like, they were going for 11 years or something. They released their first album and stuff, and a lot of bands would have given up, but look how mega they are now.
Yeah, excellent band. Thank you, Ollie, for taking the time out for the podcast. Listeners, make sure you obviously follow the band on social media, because that's when you're going to find out about the upcoming music and the upcoming shows as well. So make sure you do head along to a show if you can. All the best with the future and everything coming up, Ollie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with Crooked Tongue. Make sure you follow them on social media. And of course, please do follow Full Pelt on social media. We are on Facebook at Full Pelt, and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And finally, if you would, please do hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, wherever you're watching or listening. And we'll be back very soon for another episode of the Discover New Music podcast.